Hey everyone, my name is Chaitni. I am a health coach and a nutritionist. And this week in this video, I'm going to share how I eliminated alcohol from my diet. So before I get into it, I just want to clarify, I wasn't a very heavy drinker, but I definitely did drink and had my phases. So there was a time when post-divorce I was drinking quite a bit. There was a time when I lived on my own and I was drinking a lot. Then there came a time when I felt a little bit more comfortable in my skin and I wasn't drinking as much, but I was using it as an excuse to have a good time and to not be bored. So I've gone through these phases. However, I really felt I got to a time where I was like, I don't want to drink anymore. I don't need alcohol to make things easier for me. And I'll get into that in the video, more details of it. So that is where this whole process came about. And it's been almost a year that I haven't had any alcohol. I've been very tempted. I've had my cravings. And I wanted to put this video and share it out there because it's still kind of fresh. It's still kind of raw. It's only been a year, close to a year. And I know many of us have this desire, have this goal to work on our alcohol consumption. So this is not me telling you to cut out alcohol from your life altogether. That is your choice, your decision to make. But what this is if you are working on eliminating it or even cutting back, you will be able to use some of the information that I'm going to share with you because I personally used it. It's tried and it's tested and it can work for you. So take what makes sense to you and apply it to your life. Okay, first things first, if you are looking to eliminate alcohol or cut back, you need to find your why. Without a very clear why, it's going to be extremely hard to give up alcohol. What I will say in my case is I realized, I was using alcohol when I was stressed, or I was using alcohol when I wanted to relax or feel like I fit in, or I wanted to use alcohol as a way to deal with my boredom if I was in a social setting where I didn't really know anybody. And I didn't want that anymore because what I have learned over the years is the more in tune I am with my feelings, the good, bad, and the ugly, the more confident I am in my skin, the more I get to know myself, and the more I show up as myself. I spent so many years not being myself and always trying to be what somebody else wanted me to be or what I thought I had to be. And that didn't help me. It really diminished my spark. It diminished who I was. And I don't want to live that way. It's important for me to be true to myself because that is when I can live my best possible life. And that is when I know I make the best decisions for myself. So I wanted to be there. I wanted to keep working on this. And I knew alcohol was not helping. So that was my why. You have to figure out your purpose. You have to figure out your why, and it has to be extremely specific, extremely clear. And when it comes to you, you have to feel it in your heart, not just in your head. So that was step number one, is trying to figure out, okay, why don't I want to do this anymore? Once I decided this, I knew I was going to need a little bit of help and a little bit of accountability. So I was like, you know what? I'm not keeping this just in my head. I want to share it with somebody. In my case, I shared it with my partner because typically when alcohol is involved, it's in a social setting and he's usually with me. So at least that's how it's been recently. There was a time when I was just drinking on my own because it was just me. So I announced it to him. And I knew somewhere, he's not the kind to be like, you said you weren't going to drink, but you still drank, but I knew he would say that, okay, did you really enjoy that drink? Somewhere he was going to hold me accountable in a way that I was okay being held accountable. And so I wanted to share that with him. And it was also another way, by telling him, I felt like my determination got a little bit stronger. I had more clarity and I was more inclined to do what I said because I don't like to be that person that says something else and does something else. So I knew I was putting myself out there by telling him. And even if I did fail, I felt safe with him. So even if I did fail and I did have a drink, this was not someone who was going to make me feel like crap. This was not someone who was going to make me feel like I was not enough. This was just someone who was going to get curious and have a conversation with me about it. So that was important. So whoever you announce this to, be careful. The person matters. You don't want that person to just just go along with you and not say anything to you and not mention it to you, but you also don't want someone who's going to make you feel like garbage about not saying what you're going to do, or not being able to live up to the announcement that you made, because this is a very hard process. It's not easy, it's not simple, and it takes a lot of work. So it has to be someone who respects that, understands that, and is still going to be kind to you about that. So that was one thing I did, is I announced it to my accountability partner, or my partner in this case. Now, I was smart. I was like, okay, I'm not drinking, but there was usually hookah at these parties or at these events. So I would plant myself right in front of the hookah, and I would do hookah the entire night. Because if not alcohol, then I was going to get whatever I wanted to get, whatever feeling I wanted to get, I was going to get it out of hookah. That was what was going to help me feel not as stressed, not as much as an outcast, not as bored, not all of those things. And so that lasted for a little bit, and I realized, this was just not going to work, because just because I wasn't having alcohol doesn't mean that I was going to supplement that or replace that with something else that also felt harmful to me, and something that also really messed with my senses. It was important for me to be present and to feel everything that I was feeling. Plus, I noticed that I was doing even more hookah, because in the past it was okay, there was some alcohol, there was some hookah. In this case, there was no alcohol, so I was just having way too much hookah. And I was not okay with that. So I had to call myself out on that. I had to observe, I had to understand what I was doing and what I was choosing to do, and how I was dealing with not having not having alcohol in my life. So keep an eye on that. Watch yourself. Again, you don't need to be judgy. You don't need to be, really mean to yourself. You're just observing. Just understand, okay, I'm not having alcohol, but what else am I doing? Am I just smoking a little too much? Am I vaping too much? Am I having too much ice cream? I mean, what am I doing to deal with the alcohol withdrawal, or what am I doing to replace it with? And is that just as harmful or mildly harmful? Am I okay with it? These are the questions you want to start asking yourself, and start getting curious about what you're doing to manage that lack of alcohol. So now it was time to start looking for alternatives, replacements to alcohol and hookah. So my options were limited, right? But I got, I wouldn't say I got creative, but I did have options, even though they were limited. I just started sipping on soda, like sparkling water, and I would throw a lemon in there, and I would sip on it all night long. So I would have maybe 2, 3, 4 glasses of it. Sometimes it's just the notion of holding on to something that can make a difference. So instead of holding on to a beer bottle, or to a glass of whiskey, I was like, I'm going to hold on to this glass of soda with lemon in it, and I really liked the taste of it. So you have to find an alternative, whether it's a mocktail, or whether it's flavored water, or whether it's just nothing at all. You have to find a replacement to it, to not having alcohol, because we're so used to holding on to something. So have something to hold on to, because that is definitely going to help you. If I wasn't sipping on that soda water with lemon in it, it would have been very easy to just get up and get a drink. But this was something that it also helped me feel like I was part of the group. Everybody else was doing their thing. They were drinking. I had something in my hand. I was also sipping, and I didn't feel too left out or too outside the group. So that was the reason why I came up with this, and it's a drink that I actually enjoy. It's very simple. I don't even know if you would call it a drink, but that's usually my go-to at these events. Something else that I realized, that I was having alcohol in this group setting specifically, because I was not comfortable. I didn't really fit in. I didn't feel like I belonged, and I really missed my friends where I had lived for over 20 years. So this was new for me. It felt uncomfortable, and it made me miss my crew, my clan. So there were a lot of emotions there. And, I figured out those emotions, and I realized, okay, if I wasn't going to drink to numb them, if I wasn't going to do hookah to numb them, how was I going to face them? So I started sitting next to somebody I didn't know at these events, and there were a lot of people. I still don't know a lot of people. I would sit next to them and I would just start having a conversation. It was more about asking and understanding and listening than just constantly talking. So I spoke less, I listened more. And for me, that's fun because I love human stories. I love people sharing their thoughts, their feelings, all of that. It makes me feel really connected to the other person. So when I would sit there and just listen without any judgment, without, any of that, it felt like a really nice conversation, and it felt like I was connecting with the person. I didn't need alcohol, or I didn't need the hookah to feel like I was making an effort or feel like I was trying to fit in. So that is something that I started doing, which I would have probably never done if I was still drinking or still having hookah. So I had to get a little uncomfortable. I had to find alternatives. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to put myself out there and really make the effort to get to know these people. So this was my situation, my social setting. For you, it could be something else, and that's okay. It could be like a work event, or it could be a family gathering, or it could just be a way to deal with your stress. Start to identify those patterns. Why are you drinking in the first place? What is it doing for you? What is it taking away from you? What is it giving you? And once you start to understand that, then ask yourself, okay, what are some baby steps that I can take to deal with this discomfort, or to not run away from this emotion, actually face this emotion? So if you are feeling stressed and you're having alcohol, maybe you can be a little bit more social. Maybe you can be around friends and enjoy an uplifting conversation. Maybe it's a family gathering that stresses you out. Well, maybe you don't need to be there for 4 hours, or maybe you can start to and learn to say no. So there's so many other things, but it's going to require growth. It's going to require you getting uncomfortable. It's going to require you facing the truth, and it's going to require you putting something into action and being actually able to do it. Some other things I started doing in these settings is, if it was a party that had music and people were dancing, I would get up and dance. Luckily, I don't have too many inhibitions when it comes to dancing. I'm not somebody who needs to be plastered to have a good time on the dance floor. So I just channel that. Again, previously, if I was drinking alcohol, I probably wouldn't have even budged from my seat. I would have just sat there, people watching. But in this case, I was like, well, I have to do something or I'm going to go and have a drink. So I would just get on the dance floor, do my thing, be goofy, and just have a good time. So I danced. Something else that I did, especially if there were kids or families that were involved, I would play with the kids. We would play board games, or this is specifically when I was going on vacation with these families. And so we would play some games. We would play badminton. Play a sport. We would go on a walk or a hike. So I was doing things to keep my mind engaged, and I would limit myself with how much time I was spending around the people who are actually drinking, the ones who are just drinking and talking, which was their time to relax. That's how they were having a wonderful time, and that's fine. I didn't want that, because the more I sat there, I knew the more that boredom was going to kick in, and there was only so much I could do to keep that boredom in check, or to keep that feeling of not belonging in check. So I did it. I would sit there for a while, and then when I felt like, okay, this was really testing it, I would go and I would play with the kids, or I would do something else, and keep myself a little bit engaged. Sometimes it was watching a movie with the kids, and that was fun too. So you have to find these alternatives. You also have to know your boundaries. You have to know your threshold. You don't want to throw yourself to the wolves, because like I said, giving up alcohol is not easy. Even cutting back is not easy. So go slow and figure out your limits. Do not push yourself to the point where it's gonna be very tempting to have that alcohol, or it's gonna be very tempting to go ahead and go for that smoke. Make this easier for yourself, make it simpler, and make it more doable. And that's what I was doing in these moments. Now, here's something that I did that really helped me, and that is I didn't put pressure on myself. I told myself, yes, I didn't want to drink anymore, but if something happened and I had a drink, it was not the end of the world. I was not going to beat myself up for it. I was not going to be nasty to myself, and I was not going to label myself as a failure. This is so, so, so important to do because you cannot shame yourself into change. It's not possible. If you do, it'll only last for a while. And then when you have the next big calamity in life, you're going to go back to your old ways. So I told myself there was no pressure. This is something I was experimenting with. This is something I was doing. And as long as I was enjoying it, and as long as I was challenging myself and I was giving it 100%, I was going to keep doing it. But if I didn't want to, I didn't have to. So there was no pressure from my end on myself. And that really, really helped because I was not trying to prove anything to myself or to anybody else. Now, if you've tried to give up drinking or cut back on drinking, I'm sure you've come across some kind of social pressure, right? I did. I dealt with that social pressure. I still do. There are people who are like, oh, come on, have a drink. Don't be so boring. Or, oh my God, stop calorie counting, which I never do. Don't worry, you're not going to gain weight. All these assumptions, right, about not drinking. And that's okay. They're allowed to say those things if they want to. I don't take them personally. But in those social settings, what really helps me stick to my guns is my why. And that's why that was the first thing I said is you have to have a very clear purpose. You have to have a very clear why. And because I have that, I laugh it off and I say, no, thank you, I'm good. And I go and have my soda drink with lemon water in it. So that's something that works for me, and that's something that you can try as well because you have to have a very clear why. Now, this is a tip for those of you who drink by yourself. I've done that too. Friday evening was, that's when the alarm bells would go off. Like, come on, let's pop open that bottle of wine and let's unwind with with a few glasses of wine. So if you are a solo drinker, if you're doing this on your own, this is for you. Really get to know your triggers and your cues. What is it that gives the signal to your brain and to your body that, all right, we're ready, we want to have a drink? Is it the smell of cigarette smoke? Is it being around certain people? Well, if you're drinking alone, then you don't have the people. But is it a certain day of the week, a certain time of the day? For a lot of people, it's those evening hours, like 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. What is it? Understand those cues, understand those triggers, and then start to change them bit by bit. Because there are so many signals that are leading up to this decision. You are not just programmed to do this, but there are different things that are sending messages that are saying, okay, it's time to drink, it's time to drink, it's time to drink, like brunch for a lot of people. And that tends to be that signal that, okay, yeah, it's brunch, it's Sunday, let's have a drink, let's have a mimosa, let's have a cocktail. So figure out your cues, figure out your triggers. Sometimes it's getting out the phone call with your family, a very stressful phone call. Or sometimes it's just having a really long day at work. Okay, what else can you do? What can you do besides having that drink if, again, that's your goal, if you want to cut back on drinking or if you want to eliminate drinking? So understand the cues and understand the triggers. Now, I want to tell you about temptation because I do get tempted because sometimes the drinks just look so nice. So I am very, very tempted, and I do want to have a drink and I do want to enjoy it. And in that moment, what helps keep me on track is the vision that I have for my future self. And the thoughts of how good I feel when I don't drink. Because when I drink, even if it's just a glass of wine, I know I'm going to feel bloated. I know I'm going to feel just weird in my body, just feel a little heavy, a little uncomfortable. I know it doesn't help my depression. I know it doesn't help my anxiety. And when I think of all of these things, I just automatically take a step back and I was like, no, I don't want to give in just for instant gratification. I would rather have a long-term view and think about how this is going to help me and benefit me in the long run when I don't drink. So that is something that really helps me stick to my guns and say, no, okay, I don't want that drink. But the temptation is there. The cravings are there. They haven't completely disappeared. Like I said, it's still new. It's just a year in. And it is tempting to have that glass of drink when I'm feeling stressed out or, when I'm feeling out of place or, whatever emotions I'm dealing with. So know that it's okay. The temptation isn't going to go away overnight. Just learn to deal with it and remind yourself it's not about doing something for yourself in the moment. What's really going to matter is how you feel tomorrow and how you feel in the long term. Last but not least, I do have a trip coming up in, wine country of the world, wine regions of the world, and I am very nervous because I don't know how I'm going to deal with all of that, just going there once in my lifetime and not tasting their wine, or not feeling like I fully enjoyed my trip. I don't know. There are a lot of emotions around that. So I might put something together, I might put another video together of how I prepared myself for that and how I fared during that trip. But for now, I've given you a lot of tips, a lot of tools that you can embrace, that you can put into practice and see how it goes. As always, if you need more help, just reach out. And if you want to keep in touch, I have listed all the ways in the description. So make sure you take a peek at that. And I hope to see you here again. Thank you so much.